Hey, this is Eric from Obsessive Audio and SikTone DSP. We're going to do another Space Invader video here. This will take you through some of the different settings, the different types of sounds that you can get. We're going to play with it for a bit. But first, let's talk about safety. Safety first. This is a pretty unbridled plugin that does have limitations and constraints programmed into it, but you might find that it's not quite as much limitation as with some other plugins. For instance, if you turn up this feedback, the RT60 knob, all the way or near the top, it starts to get loud pretty fast. So you gotta be careful about that. Now there is a soft clipper on the wet here, which will help a lot. And there's also an output knob that you can pull back on that delay. Also a trim in the tab section here. So these are all there to help you control the insane levels that can build up in this feedback mechanism here. But on top of that, what I've been doing, and I recommend this anyway, just as a general practice, is to always have some kind of brick wall limiting, some kind of hard limiting. In this case, I've got the T-Rex, the stealth limiter. It's great, but it doesn't have to be this. Any kind of limiter will do. Every DAW seems to have one included, so I mean you could just use that. And again, this isn't to change the sound or to get anything loud. This is just to protect your ears, protect your speakers from any kind of unforeseen volume spike. Particularly if you're saving your own presets and you want to go through a bunch of presets. I've got some presets here for the demo, but I didn't put presets into this plugin yet, and I might if I can figure out a few things, but I'm always going to pull that RT60 down and get the plugin quiet before I change presets, just so I don't go into a plugin and then all of a sudden it's really loud, because the buffer doesn't actually clear when you're just changing a lot of parameters quickly. Not here in Reaper anyway. I'm not sure about other DAWs, but so yeah, you want to be careful. So if you're doing presets, pull that down, get it quiet before you go to the next thing. That's going to help you out a lot. And also put that limiter on there. Okay, so that out of the way, let's go to the default setting and let's just hear what we have.
Darker than night, and
So here it's pretty long effect. There's a bunch of taps going on, a bunch of delays. Again, this is like a two chains, basically. On the left, you've got one delay that goes into the next, delay. And on the right, you got the same thing, but separate times for each. So you can set them separately. And here's where you would mix them. So if I only wanted, say, the first delay, do that. That should give me, let's pull that down. When you pull down the RT60 all the way, that's just going to be one repeat. And then the feedback, of course, you can increase it to infinity.
darker than night,
Let's turn the wet up.
darker than night.
So that's just one repeat. You can hear, listen again, you can hear that the left and the right have slightly different delay times, which is giving you a bit of a widening kind of stereo effect.
Darker than night.
But if I didn't want that, I could take left equals right button right here, put that in, and what that's going to do is wherever you have the left delay set, it's also going to lock right into that same time. And effectively, in this scenario, it's going to create a mono delay.
Darker than night.
Now, it still sounds stereo, and the reason for that is because it's the delay's being modulated here. And those modulators, again, they're rigged in a particular scheme that makes things more stereo and wider. But you can take that off if you want by turning the range all the way down.
Darker than night. Darker than night.
And if I wanted to increase the delay time,
darker than night.
Maybe give it some more feedback.
And I can't wait.
So you have kind of your basic standard delay. If we say, let's set this pretty slow and let's take this back down, the feedback, this would be like a slapback delay effect, which we all know.
Darker than night.
And that's a little bit diffused. It does seem still to have some timing differences and stuff, which is cool. I don't know why that's happening, actually.
Darker than night.
This should have no effect when that left-right is on. This should have no effect. But let's say I wanted a delay that was more diffused. So instead of taking off the first tap, let's let it go through the first and second delay and tap in at the third point.
Darker than night.
And what you're hearing there is a combination of 1, 2, and 3, because it goes into 1, then it adds 2, a second delay, and then this third one. And that's going to be more diffuse sound. It's going to be more in the background kind of thing. So talking about like a 3D plane between front and back. Let's also take off that LR and give it a slight, almost the same setting, but not quite. That'll help to widen it.
Darker than night.
And you can see there that it has quite a good motion from left to right as well. That's in part the modulation, but it's also in part the way that the brain works here in the middle.
Darker than night.
But of course, if we want to go closer to a slapback, we're going to have to pull this in.
Darker than night.
That's not bad. Let's start with the dry and just gradually fade it in and hear what it does.
Darker than night. And I can't wait.
So again, that's a pretty typical use. That's a pretty typical sound, which isn't necessarily even everything you can do with this, obviously, but it has, I don't know, it just has that little bit of extra. There's a bit of saturation on it. This might be a good solution just for your normal mixing routines. Now, on the other hand, if you want to start get crazy with, say, the RT60 here, and watch what I'm talking about, the level, you're going to see. I'm going to need to turn this down quickly. Let's go with a longer delay time. You can see how the volume started to jump up, so I'm just going to preemptively pull this wet down.
Darker than night, and I can't wait, and I won't break.
Let's give it some modulation there.
And I can't wait, and I won't break.
Let's say you wanted to do that delay sweeping trick. Actually, let's make left equals right. Now we're on our infinite loop here. You can see here, actually, one side ended up not quite as loud as the other. You can see here the right is quieter. But this is if you're making some kind of soundscape or something. Let's pull this down a little bit, too. There we go. It's not imperative that that there's any space here. That's okay to pin these because, again, it does go through a soft clipper. But I find I actually get a kind of a nice sound as long as I'm seeing some activity here. So I've left the meters the way they are for now. Anyway, so let's get back to this idea that the one channel is not as loud as the other, this right channel. What I can actually do is use this cross feed section here and take some of the left and put it into the right. You see it's starting to even out the level there. Actually, I went a little too far with that. Well, let's make it up. Let's put some of the right into the left. Just proceed with caution, as always. Ha ha ha. Yeah, right. Okay. There we go. So by now, hopefully, you've thoroughly annoyed your spouse, roommates, neighbors. What's that horrible sound? And then maybe play with the delay a bit from here. There we go. Some weird alien chirping here. Let's play with the distortion section. Here's some of those modes. Let's try to really mess with the sound a bit here. You can blend in more of that distortion and mix it. You notice when I mix in more distortion, it actually gets quieter. And that is because of the headroom of the distortion. The distortion does have some hard clipping in it. So if you run into that and you think that it's a problem, you'd rather have the distortion louder, you can move the saturation headroom knob up, and that'll do it for you. I like the way it sounds when it's really really high, keeping in mind your levels and stuff like that, but I could get away with a bit more here, I think. Let's try some of the other modes. Sandblast is a cool one. You listen to... Let me pull that back. The tone control just basically takes out a lot of top end that maybe you do or don't want. Let's do Iceman. Iceman's one of the fun ones here. And let's add some more modulation here. It's a very cool reactive kind of distortion. It's a reactive effect. That here I'll put. Let's put some of the dry into that saturation. Let's get. You know what? Let's get rid of the wet. Let's use this as a distortion box. So get rid of the wet. Now here's your dry signal. You can send the dry to the soft clipper, the same one that the delays go into, which I tend to like if I'm going for a distorted sound. It's just that extra layer of harmonics. You can send it to the filter, which maybe let's not do that right now. You send it to the saturator, to this section here. We've got Iceman selected. Let's listen to what that sounds like on a dry vocal.
Darker than night. And I can't wait.
Can we give it a bit more level here? We could take the tone of the distortion down. Although Iceman is a bit about the high end. If you wanted to do, let's go back to a dry sound. So we're just going to use this as a filter box in this case. We'll take the wet all the way down. So you only got the dry that's going into the soft clipper, but not the saturation, but it is going into the low pass filter. You can see down here on the low pass filter, that cutoff is being modulated a little bit. Set at a medium rate, just a little bit of range, and the way that all these filters under the hood work, that should be giving us a stereo motion because the filters in the left and right will be hitting at different times. Let's hear what that sounds like.
Darker than night, and I can't wait.
Again, that's not using that's not using the delays at all, but it is using the filter. We could then maybe, if we wanted to saturate that a bit, let's put that on. Let's pick something a bit more mellow. The standard overdrive is a good one. Let's turn that gain down a bit, the drive and the mix. Let's hear what this gives us.
Darker than night, and I can't wait. And I won't break.
So you can mix more or less of that saturation, and obviously with the mix knob, let's hear it off.
Darker than night,
And then start to blend it
in. And I can't wait.
That's really nice, and that blend knob's responding really well. It means that the saturation headroom's set at a good spot. So let's say we had the headroom way down on the saturation, and we started to mix some in. It's not going to be as loud.
Darker than night, and I can't wait.
Which is, you might want that too. It's a little bit of a sag kind of effect, and there is more hard clipping when it's down all the way. In fact, when you pull this down to the minimum and use something like Sandblast,
Darker than night, and
let's give it a bit more output.
I can't wait.
Let's give it a bit of headroom.
Darker than night, and I can't wait.
This is really cool thing that happens on the top end, and some of these has it bent or broken? Let's try bent.
Darker than night,
Some of them really get crazy when you.
and I can't wait.
There, when you start to play with broken is a good one.
Darker than night,
Let's get rid of that filter mod.
and I can't wait. And I won't break.
You can see you've got a lot of options here for a lot of different tones. Let's do another setting here that's almost synth-like. It uses the Iceman saturation. I'm going to increase this up all the way. Pull this back a little bit because we know what's coming.
Darker than
Let's play with that drive a bit. And that's an effect that was achieved with a pretty low headroom. Let's increase that headroom a bit.
darker than night.
Well, that was cool. That was unexpected. Again, that's the fun of the plugin. You get probably a good idea when you're playing around with this to actually be hitting record somewhere to dump this audio to a track in case you come up with something really cool that, that can't be replicated. At a certain level, it becomes an instrument, really, that you can play around with, and it will... It doesn't self-oscillate, but it will, it'll grab onto something. And let's try some acoustic guitar. It'll grab onto something, and then once you get that feedback going, you could just stop the source. Now, if you want tighter, more intimate effects, what you can do is just get rid of that third tap. Maybe base it more off the first and the second tap. There's the trim. I'm actually going to get rid of this crossfeed here too. Let's take down the second too. And that's a lot more. It's a lot more standard, more in your face kind of simple delay sound. Or if you want to just get rid of this one altogether and just only go with the third one, that's another option too. Hear how much it changes by the time it gets there. Because that's been going through all the filters, all the delays, and also saturation sections, I believe. It's got and it's also picked up a lot of level by the time it gets here, so it's hitting the saturation probably quite a bit harder. Anyway, great fun to experiment with and to get different sounds with. Let's do some more kind of typical standard sounds, like chorus. Everybody likes a good stereo chorus, so let's see what we're doing here. We're actually using all of the taps. We're set for very low delay time on both the left and right, although they're different from each other. So that'll give you some stereo effect. Not a lot of feedback here, just the one repeat, but let's increase that just ever so slightly. Let's make the left even a bit longer. In the headphones, you can really tune in your stereo field. That's feeling nice to me. So just over one repeat, just a little bit of feedback. This is using all the taps. You don't have to. You can get a simpler, kind of more coarse pedally effect just by leaning more on that first tap, which is tighter and drier. And let's increase the range of the modulation here and speed it up a bit. And here's your chorus effect. Make it a little less warbly. There you go, standard chorus. Mix in some of the overdrive if you wanted to make it fatter. And if you take the feedback on any chorus and increase the feedback, you're going to start to get these pseudo flanger effects. Let's increase that and hear what happens. It's going to get louder though too. So maybe I don't want so much overdrive. Maybe not so much audible distortion when it gets loud here. Let's take that rate down a bit, but let's make it sweep more. Yeah, I don't know what you call that, a flanger. Ibanez used to have a really cool pedal that would make sounds like this. It's like their delay slash flanger pedal, I think is what they called it. So it's another kind of sound where you can go from a typical chorus and then start to tweak it up Space Invader style a little bit. Let's do a sound that sounds seriously broken here. We got the broken saturation on, a bit of drive, headroom's pulled back quite a bit, and then I guess it's been made up here on the wet. Tones all the way up, just a bit blended in. We're only using the first tap, so this should be more in-your-face sound, not quite as diffuse or quite as stereo. Left is not equal right, though, so that there should be some stereo coming here from two different things hitting at different times. You can see the rate, the modulation rate here is cranked in quite a bit of range. It's also modulating the filters, so this will be interesting. Let's hear what we've got going on. Yeah, that sounds broken. See the rates all the way down, but because I've got the 4 times switch on, it's still going to have some speed to it. If I took that off, haha. Let's bring in some of those other taps, hear what they've been doing. Oh, that's nice. It's hitting the clippers just really nicely. Even that final output clipper. Just a little bit of activity left here. That's a good thing to see. Again, you can pin it. That's going to add more of that soft distortion. And I like it when you're just seeing a little bit of activity left. It's always, to me, a good place to be. Again, I've turned the input off ages ago. I stopped the DAW. This is just going on its own from its own feedback. Anyway, well, I hope you enjoyed that. Just some of the many things that you can do with Space Invader. We'll see you next time. Thanks for checking this out.